Good afternoon, and welcome to the second session of a two-part series, Reducing and Diverting Plastic Waste in Biomedical Laboratories and Facilities. I'm Megan Schultz-Spons, Executive Director of Northeast Recycling Council, or NERC. For those of you who are not familiar with NERC, we're an 11-state organization dedicated to minimizing waste, conserving natural resources, and advancing a sustainable economy through facilitated collaboration and action. We're pleased to bring you this series in partnership with Mass Recycle, the statewide nonprofit organization that is dedicated to improving sustainable materials management. Mass Recycle focuses on education, connection, and advocacy. More recently, they've been working on combating recycling misinformation in the media by telling their own story. They will run a roundtable at our upcoming conference in Syracuse, New York, October 28th to 30th. I hope to see many of you there. As Gretchen Carey, president of Mass Recycle and sustainability manager for New England at Republic Services, noted in part one of this webinar series, Massachusetts is home to the largest life sciences hub in the country. Gretchen was unable to join us for today's event. However, she was a co-founder of Green Labs Recycling, who's here today. The Massachusetts Department of the Environment, Mass DEP, supports a robust recycling infrastructure through regulation. In 2018, for safety reasons, regulations in Massachusetts were updated to ban pipette boxes and solution bottles from recycling for safety reasons, again. So today's speakers here are here to talk about how their organizations are working to fill this gap. Before we get started, please note that this event is being recorded. A recording and a copy of the presentations will be sent to you after. Last week, we discussed challenges and opportunities in biopharma and medical institutions. If you missed it, you can watch the recording by going to our website. I'm excited to introduce to you today a wonderful group of speakers. We'll hear from Sam White, CEO at Green Labs Recycling, Catherine Hoffman, Sustainability Manager at Eastman, and James O'Brien, co-founder and CEO at Polycarbon. I would also like to thank our sponsors, beginning with our presenting sponsor, Takeda Pharmaceutical Company. A bit about Takeda. Takeda is focused on creating better health for people and a brighter future for the world. They aim to discover and deliver life-transforming treatments in their core therapeutic and business areas, including gastrointestinal and inflammation, rare diseases, plasma-derived therapies, oncology, neuroscience, and vaccines. Together with their partners, they aim to improve the patient experience and advance a new frontier of treatment options through their dynamic and diverse pipeline. As a leading values-based R&D-driven biopharma company headquartered in Japan, they're guided by their commitment to patients, people, and the planet. Their employees in approximately 80 countries and regions are driven by their purpose and are grounded in the values that have defined them for more than 2 centuries. I'd also like to thank our gold sponsor, Polycarbon. Following the presentations and discussion, we will have an audience Q&A. You can submit your questions for the speakers in the Q&A box on your screen below at any time. And now we will go to Sam.
Fantastic. Well, Megan, thank you so much for the introduction and the opportunity to talk about this very important topic of plastics in life sciences and in biotech. I just want to make sure that do an audio check, visual check, that everything looks good on your end.
Perfect. Yep.
Great. So my name is Sam White. I'm the CEO of Green Labs Recycling. We are a niche recycling company that focuses on hyper-local recycling and manufacturing within a 60-mile radius. We're focused in the Boston Biotech Hub. And as Megan said, since 2018, when China stopped taking our waste, one of the biggest impacts was on the life sciences community, because traditional waste haulers such as Republic, Casella, Waste Management stopped recycling the pipette tip boxes, media bottles, really anything that looked like a lab product. So a lot of lab managers will tell me that, they didn't know it until they saw their single stream waste hauler dump all of the trash with their recycling boxes in the same truck. And if they don't do that at the end, they'll still sort it out. Um, and so this is a statistic from Jacqueline from Millipore. Every hour on the hour, an Olympic-sized swimming pool gets filled with single-use plastic. 30,000 tons of this is incinerated or ends up in landfill every year globally. And so just in the greater Boston area, just imagine 5 million pounds of just the pipette tip boxes getting incinerated or ending up in landfills. And Green Labs only recycled about 200,000 pounds of this. And so you can see the huge gap that we have to fill. And I'm grateful to Polycarbon and Eastman doing their part to try to fill this gap as well. In order to scale our operations, we decided to partner with Veolia. And Veolia is one of the largest hazardous waste regulated recycling and waste company for really globally. And we are kind of front and center for Veolia to enable their customers to recycle their pipette tip boxes, media bottles, and we have some new and exciting initiatives to actually recycle pipette tips as well. Veolia is in a perfect situation to separate the pipette tips, send it to their plant in Middleton, and autoclave and sterilize these tips before we recycle them. So we're really excited about that offering. So as I said before, we collect from labs such as Sanofi, Pfizer, Bristol Myers Squibb, many of the universities, and most of the labs that are growing startups, such as ABI Labs and Lab Central, the Engine. And what we do, let me take you kind of behind the scenes of recycling for lab plastic at Green Labs. So first, we bring it back to Concord, Massachusetts, and this is, we granulate the plastic to 1/4 inch, and I don't know if you can see me, but I'm basically taking some flakes from a box, and you can kind of see what we granulate the pipette tip boxes and anything that is polypropylene. And then 60 miles from the Boston labs, we manufacture this desktop, benchtop tip box. It's basically a transfer bin where scientists can see what their plastic is getting recycled into. And we designed it so it takes up less space on the bench than a 1-gallon Sharps container. It's made of 100% recycled plastic, and all this happens 60 miles away. And we are full mode of manufacturing. We can barely keep up with demand of this product. And so let me take you into the manufacturing process. So what you're going to see, this is a Gaylord of granulated pipette tip boxes. And you'll see here, sorry for the noise, but I thought it would kind of bring reality to what we do on the back end of Green Lab. So what you're looking at is a full Gaylord of granulated plastic. On the right side, you see a vacuum that's vacuuming these flakes. And then you'll about to see an injection molding machine where we melt the plastic into the three different cavities. And at the end, you'll see this slider that is being manufactured at the end of the production line. And so the reason why I thought it was important to showcase this, that was raw footage taken from my phone. And I think it's important to show the transparency that Green Labs has on the back end of recycling. And so everything we do with our customers comes with data. Data is important for biotech and life sciences. And so they insist on this level of data. So at any point in time, they can know what their CO2 equivalent is for both recycling as well as the CO2 equivalent for purchasing a benchtop that is made of 100% recycled plastic versus a 1-gallon Sharps container that is made of virgin plastic that comes from oil. And that is what we're all trying to prevent: more oil and natural gas from being used to make even more plastic. What we accept today are the PET media bottles and the conical tube racks and pipette tip boxes. We also recently started to accept glass and pipette tips. It's important that we collect more and more items to make it as convenient as possible for our customers. And this is I'm not going to show you the whole video, but this is a documentary that we felt was really important to create to educate people on what is happening in the biotech and life sciences community. They do such powerful work for human health, but they all want to provide a healthy environment as well, particularly the scientists. So this is just the start. Actually, I'm sorry. Our product is made. So actually, I won't be able to show this, but Megan, you can send out a link to this documentary in the chat, if you will. And that's it for now from my end. By the way, I'm not usually dressed like this when I'm granulating plastic and sorting, but today is Rosh Hashanah, so I do want to wish everyone a happy and sweet New Year and less plastic.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year to you too. Happy Rosh Hashanah.
Thank you.
So that was really great. And I did pop that link in the chat. Hopefully everyone can see that. We are going to hold questions until after we have the moderated discussion, which is following Catherine and James' presentations next. So Catherine, if we could ask you to share your screen.
Absolutely.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about healthcare plastics recycling. And so within the healthcare facilities and related to healthcare, of course, there's all sorts of lab and life science work going on. And so highly related areas of plastic that we're trying to recycle. And so let's start out with a little bit of information about Eastman, just in case you're not familiar with us and why we're interested in healthcare plastics recycling. And so just a high level corporate view of who we are. We're a materials innovation company that's headquartered in Kingsport, Tennessee, but we've got about 14,000 employees globally. Our moral purpose is to enhance the quality of life in a material way. And so recycling materials, medical materials falls under that quite well. We also supply quite a bit of material to the medical industry as well as that life science and lab space. And so we've been doing this for several decades and developed materials over time. And so these are examples of those products. There's a material, PETG, that is used in a lot of rigid packaging. It's a really great material for sterile barrier packaging. There's quite a bit of PET that is used in blood tubes and syringes and connectors. And then we make a more rubbery type material that is used in IV bags and tubing, and then some more specialty type polyesters that get used in devices, and a flame retardant version that's used in devices that have electronics in them. It's highly resistant to environmental stress cracking from the cleaners that are used in the hospital. So we sell quite a bit of material into this space. We sell the resin, not the actual final made product, but because we sell so much of this resin into the space, then we're highly engaged in this medical market and want to make sure that these materials can be recycled. Eastman also is operating a molecular recycling process called methanolysis. And with this, we take recovered polyester and we run it through first a mechanical purification process, and then we take it through a depolymerization. We basically undo those polymer chains to get to the monomers, and then we reuse those monomers to then make new copolyesters that can be sold into the medical market as well as others. And this is all material to material recycling that we do, and it is done at a lower footprint than a virgin fossil process. That's a commitment that we made in investing in this type of process. And so this is currently operational at our Kingsport facility, and then we've got plans for additional plants as well. From a feedstock perspective, this is what we're taking today, and it's all complementary to the mechanical recycling streams that exist today. So we don't want clear bottles that have somewhere else to go. And so we've got things like colored rejects, those green bottles or opaque shampoo bottles. There's a lot of waste in mechanical recycling, as well as then green strapping that helps hold our goods to pallets during shipping. PET, like tubs and trays, like what your berries come in at the grocery store. And then textile waste as well as carpet waste. And so one of the things that we're currently doing is actually qualifying some medical products that are clean and come out of the medical system. So we're really focused on where are these alternative streams of material that don't have anywhere else to go besides landfill and incineration. And medical plastics fall in that category really well. And just for scale, this is running. We are processing material today, and we've taken it to this granulated form that then gets fed into our equipment. And we are currently manufacturing and selling this material. So Eastman is really interested in this space of recycling medical plastics, both from the front end where we supply resin to this space and we want to make sure that it can be recycled, and on the back end where we are looking for these feedstocks that help expand the number of materials that can be recycled. And so one way we do that is through engaging with the Healthcare Plastics Recycling Council. And so this is a large value chain collaborative that has multiple members. We've got resin suppliers, converters, medical device manufacturers, life science companies, waste haulers, and hospitals that are all engaged within this council. And we're all working together across the value chain to improve recyclability for healthcare plastics. And we do this through technical project work. It is all member driven. So it might not be our full-time job, but it's part of our job, and we all work together to run these different programs. And so one of those that's going on today is a program with Houston Methodist, and we are currently working to develop a economically viable and scalable recycling program with the Houston Methodist Hospital System. And we're doing this in conjunction with the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. And so we're really looking to establish recycling in a way that doesn't require subsidies and can continue to run in the area after we've set it up. And so starting with Houston Methodist, who's been a fantastic partner, and then expanding to other hospitals in the region, as well as other clinics and pharmacies and life science labs that are there. And so for an example of what kind of materials we're collecting, this is from the OR. So we go in and do these sort of waste characterizations regularly, and we're looking at all areas of hospital and medical plastics. As you can see, there's a pretty wide range of what we're getting. So there's a lot of flexible materials and rigid materials, all different material types, as well as materials that are non-plastics that find their way into the waste today. And so there's a significant volume here of really clean, high quality materials that are really well suited to recycling, given the high performance requirements for plastics in this space. They really have a high purity. There's very few additives, very few colorants, and they really are ideal for recycling. So we're really excited about this program that we're getting moving in Houston to be able to recycle these materials. And then what the other big deliverable out of that program is a playbook, and that will really detail all of the steps and pieces and people that need to be involved to set something like this up so that we can copy paste it into other regions as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much. Well, we look forward to talking more about the challenges and opportunities and digging more into that. All right, James, you are up.
Awesome. I'm gonna share my screen here. If you don't mind, give me a thumbs up, Meg, when I got that and you can hear me okay.
Yep, we see it and we can hear you.
Awesome. Very excited to be here, everyone. Nothing more inspiring than sharing an audience with folks that are looking to make an impact, divert plastic from landfills and incinerators, and engage in circular solutions. So once again, my name is James O'Brien. I'm one of the co-founders of Polycarbon, the CEO, and my sustainability journey, much like many of you, started at the benchtop. Many years ago, I was a training physician scientist at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, performing my immunometabolism work at the benchtop, really shocked by the amount of plastic that I was consuming. My classmate and I at that time knew that there was a better way and that a truly circular supply chain would be one that could deliver a decarbonization strategy for life science and healthcare laboratories. So Polycarbon today exists as a platform for recycling and remanufacturing single-use scientific plastics rooted in a truly closed-loop supply chain. So today we'll be talking about circularity, defining what that is. We'll discuss our services and how you can start today on your closed loop journey. And we'll wrap things up with just a brief touch point on how partnerships enable innovation in this space. So underpinning this entire conversation today, why are we stuck with plastic? It's incredibly reliable, versatile. It's provided a prolific portfolio of consumables that serve us at the benchtop today. But for a long time, we've told ourselves that it's cheap. And is plastic really that cheap? Well, when we look at the energy density of this material, we really interrogate this supply chain here. We realize that just to get these products to our door, conical tubes, pipette tips, microcentrifuge tubes, it's incredibly energy intensive and more importantly, wasteful. In order to create an equivalent amount of plastic as compared to steel, it requires almost 5 times the energy to make that plastic. In the actual manufacturing process or the purification process of the crude oil derived plastics, we consume almost 120% more fossil fuels than is actually embodied in the final product. So just to get this product to our door, incredibly energy intensive. Now, there's that pre-consumption cost in manufacturing, and then there's this disposal carbon footprint that we also need to be very aware of. Plastic that's used in the lab one time, bound for a landfill or an incinerator, ultimately confers carbon emissions that is incredibly onerous to our industry. The reason why recycling is beneficial from a climate perspective is because that recycled feedstock replaces the demand for virgin resin in product manufacturing. That's where the carbon benefit is of a closed loop supply chain. So is plastic really that cheap? It is definitively not. When we look at studies that try to capture the externalized cost of managing these materials, peer-reviewed publications indicate that about $1,000 per metric ton is currently not really encapsulated in the price tag of that case of pipette tips that you may be buying. So we as an industry, we have a rapid and growing carbon problem, and a lot of that's attributed to the 12 billion pounds of plastic waste that we're using one time and then replacing the demand for every single year. Now, we have to be focused on that net new demand every single year because that's what draws from the fossil fuel industry and ultimately confers this carbon footprint. Almost 40 to 60% of our carbon footprint as an industry operating these laboratories is attributed to these plastic products. Now, an immense problem, but the fantastic news is that we don't need to wait for any deep tech technology to come to market. By deploying the principles of a circular economy and rooting ourselves specifically in a closed loop supply chain, we can decarbonize our labs and take action to not just recycle, but close the loop. So at Polycarbon, there are really three core pillars here that allow us to work with scientists across the globe today to help them make science more sustainable. We provide a brand agnostic closed loop recycling solution. So once again, we accept any brand of rigid laboratory plastic. That material enters our supply chain, and it's then reprocessed and purified and ultimately used to isolate a circular resin that produces polycarbon laboratory consumables, as well as consumables of our partner manufacturers. But the reason why so many of our sustainability-minded scientists work with us today is because we track every pound of plastic waste through our supply chain, not just an estimate, but an actual report of CO2 emission reduced based on a third-party verified life cycle assessment. This is not a fancy calculator. This is not your favorite waste hauler reporting you gross tonnage hauled away. This is an interrogation of our supply chain based on transportation, reprocessing, and most importantly, it's been rubber stamped by a third party that can verify those CO2 emission reductions, freshwater conservation, and crude oil supplantation from the market. So across the US and Europe today, we service over 1,000 laboratories. A fantastic sign that there's this changing tide within the laboratory where scientists are demanding circularity, not just recycling. In 2023, we've been capable of reducing CO2 emissions by 1.1 million kilograms. We've conserved over almost 2 million cubic meters of water. And most importantly, we've supplanted in the market the demand for almost 62 metric tons of crude oil. That's what this is all about. That is why recycling is beneficial, replacing the demand for crude oil and net new virgin resins. So we have to contextualize this. Why is circularity so important? Well, right now we operate in a single-use supply chain. We have an exponentially growing demand for plastics and a correlated exponential increase in carbon emissions. In parts of the market, we've seen downcycling strategies employed to try to address this problem. Downcycling refers to a process by which you take plastic, recycle it, and you produce a product that cannot or will not be recycled again. It's fundamentally reused. Think like a plastic park bench here. This is fundamentally limited in terms of its scalability because you cannot take an industry with an exponentially growing single-use plastic waste stream with an industry that produces products that will be used again and again. There's a disequilibrium there. Now, over the years, we've seen some manufacturers that produce plastic consumables for the healthcare space start to utilize fun things like bio-based resins. This is a net positive for manufacturing, but it fails to address the post-consumption cost and the exponentially growing plastic problem on the back end and the associated carbon emissions. Only a circular solution, a solution that addresses the pre-consumption cost, making manufacturing more sustainable by displacing the need for virgin resin, and a solution that addresses end of life can truly confer the carbon benefit that our industry needs today. So here at Polycarbon, we provide a wide array of closed loop recycling solutions to our customers that really reflects where they are in their sustainability journey. Whether you're a hospital laboratory, a biopharma laboratory, we have a solution for you. The receptacles that you see on the screen here, we affectionately call our carbon receptacles. On the left, we have our closed loop recycling solution for any brand of pipette tip box. For those folks that want to go beyond the box, we provide our Beta Carbon program where we collect clear and color rigid plastics of any brand. This year, we launched our nitrile glove recycling solution as well as PPE recycling as well. What's really important to our strategy as it relates to landfill diversion and circularity is that we focus first and foremost on reducing red bag waste overclassification. Pervasive in our industry. We're focused on diversion and separation at the point of source, and we work hand in hand with scientists and EH&S in order to make that determination to ensure that we're helping those customers save on both cost and carbon. When customers scale beyond small volumes where they may slot into one of our mailback programs, we provide core services where we run our own regional trucks for regional processing, both in Northern California, Southern California, the New England market, and specifically Massachusetts. And I'm excited to announce on this call today an expansion later in 2025 into the Mid-Atlantic. Now, what makes polycarbon closed loop truly circular and not downcycling is the production of these closed loop laboratory products. We set out on a mission to close the loop to direct these circular resins back into a supply chain that serves scientists. The reason why this confers the greatest carbon benefit is because you maximize use cycles. It's not a one-time use, but instead you're getting multiple turns on that kilogram of plastic, conferring a compounding carbon benefit over time. Polycarbon not only produces today our own collection of laboratory consumables, but has now equipped other manufacturers as well with the ability to do so to bring sustainability to their customer base. At Polycarbon, we believe that sustainability is a science. Period. Full stop. We believe in evidence-based sustainability, and the only way we should be evaluating sustainability solutions in the lab, and specifically recycling solutions, is based off of those that are backed by a third-party verified life cycle assessment. Life cycle assessments are an incredibly powerful tool for us to standardize our industry. LCAs standardize a company's environmental impact and allow us to actually interrogate opportunities, the processes with empirically measurable statistics. We can analyze that, and with this information, help both our customers and even Polycarbon's own internal operations to create a decarbonization plan. So the living embodiment of this is Polycarbon's Carbon Counter. So this portal is made accessible to all of our customers that participate in closed loop recycling and sustainable procurement. And once again, this is backed by a third-party verified life cycle assessment. They can track their CO2 emission reductions achieved. They can track their crude oil supplantation. And once again, they can witness in real time the compounding benefit of maximizing use cycles of this material, not extruding another plank of plastic lumber, but having this material go to serve a supply chain that displaces the need for virgin resin in products that are used one time and then discarded. So year to date, our community of sustainability-minded scientists have been able to achieve quite an impact. Almost 7.2 million cubic meters of water conserved, 4,700 metric tons of CO2 emissions reduced, and almost 1,200 metric tons of crude oil supplanted from the market. That's what this is all about, supplanting the need for net new virgin resins derived from fossil fuels by supplanting it with a renewable feedstock. So as we wrap things up here today, I just wanted to really hone in on some key points here. Sustainability is definitively a science, and everything that we do in the laboratory should be evidence-based. When we look at the lab, we have a fantastic opportunity with plastics. It's one of the largest sources of CO2 emissions, and we can minimize the climate impact of these plastics by maximizing use cycles, not just turning into a product that is reused, but turning it into consumables that can be used again at the benchtop, and specifically meet that demand for net new plastics in that coming year. Easiest way to get started is to reach out to our team here at Polycarbon. And if I have time left, I'd love to just highlight one point. At Polycarbon, we believe that collaboration is key to scaling a circular economy. Partnership enables sustainable innovation. I just want to take the last minute here to highlight some of the work we've been doing with partners in this space. Earlier this year, Polycarbon set out with Beckman Coulter Life Sciences to bring our closed loop recycling solution and our circular resins to their scientists that engage in liquid handling automation. It's been incredible to see the engagement from legacy manufacturers that want to deliver sustainability to their customers. Over the coming months, we recently partnered with LabCon North America, a very well-known consumable manufacturer, similarly to bring to their customer base a demonstration of extended producer responsibility, because that's the direction that we're heading at as an industry. And on this call, based off of the nature of this audience, I thought it would be particularly important to point out one of our technology partnerships in place with Sterilist Solutions. Sterilist Solutions provides an on-site medical waste remediation system that can treat infectious material, rendering it municipal solid waste capable of being recycled. That's the iterations that we're capable of performing as a company here to unlock additional waste streams that can enter this closed loop supply chain. So with that, once again, my name's James O'Brien from Polycarbon. We're making science more sustainable. I'm looking forward to the panel here.
Thank you so much, James. All right, we're going to bring all of our speakers back now to go through some moderator questions, and then we will go open it up to attendee questions from there. So I'm just going to add folks to the spotlight here. Okay, thank you, Sophie. Sophie's helping behind the scenes today. So once again, thank you all. Just jumping in, James, you mentioned the red bag waste diversion, and that brings us to, I think, this obvious question or implication that like medical facilities, hospitals, and laboratories are heavily regulated. And on top of that, there are differences between those two. Hospitals and labs are different, right? So wondering if we could just go to each one of you and ask you all like what your experience has been in terms of managing those regulations, and can you also speak to any of those different restrictions that separate hospitals from labs and material, and whether those are also material streams that you're seeing that are different? Who would like to start?
Yeah, I think you bring up a very good point. When we're not a regulated waste company and we start to handle things that could be biologically dangerous, such as nitrile gloves and pipette tips, glass, it's very important. That's why we partnered with Veolia, who can handle that, autoclave it locally, and then have us recycle.
That's great. Yeah, having that, I think that came through your presentation as well, that, having, and James spoke to it too, that collaboration between, multiple solution providers to make it possible. James.
Yeah, as someone that has been in acute care settings as well as the laboratories, there's distinct differences, I would say, between the opportunity to collect materials in the two work settings. Feasible in both. However, in the life science sector, as I know Sam knows as well, we have an incredibly unique opportunity related to like the homogeneity of like the plastic types. You can have 1,000 different brands of plastics, but at the end of the day, they all use ExxonMobil PD702, which is like, I think, the homopolymer polypropylene that comprises most of these plastics. I may be getting the part number wrong there. So in terms of homogeneity, unique opportunity to take a really valuable feedstock, collect it, and recycle it. Not to mention the emergent nature of these work settings in the laboratory. They're tightly controlled, but scientists have a bit more time, allowing you to implement, I would say, more encompassing diversion strategies that take into account very common workflows. That stands in stark contrast to hospital settings. And last thing about maybe pivoting to acute care settings or hospitals, you're dealing with what I would imagine to be a very heterogeneous material stream, a lot of PVC, which is a major no-no for many recyclers, a lot of flexible packaging, an abundance of that. And oftentimes, I would say a workforce that is very interested in sustainability, but may not have the time in that instance to do so. We've gotten around that at Polycarbon by being very focused with our work with hospitals, focusing on laboratory plastic recycling in pathology labs or blue wrap recycling. So being focused in healthcare, we found to be the most scalable strategy.
Catherine.
Yeah. A lot of what James said is really true. So within the hospital system, a lot of times we're working with nurses to put those materials in the proper place, and nurses have time constraints and their main focus is patient care, and they are not infrared detectors. So we have to have a system that works for the hospital and the people who need to be doing that collection. There's also a space issue. So hospitals are not designed to have an abundance of space for a lot of recycling bins. They're again focused on patient care and how do we maximize that. So Another piece of working within the hospital is finding that space to do the collection. And then when we're talking about somebody who doesn't have time, it needs to be simple. And so a lot of times you end up with more of a single stream recycling system, which is then gets at that heterogeneous piece that James mentioned. So now we're going to have our polyesters commingled with our olefins, and they are a lot of times you've got a really wide range of like small format to like 4 foot long packaging, and some of that is flexible and some of it's rigid, so we have to find a sortation facility that can handle that really wide range of really very clean material, because 85% of the plastic comes out of a hospital is clean, not contaminated. And we don't necessarily want to mix it with a MRF stream. So there's a lot of complexity in setting up that hospital recycling system. We do focus right now on areas that are kind of pre-patient. So it's not coming into contact with patient. And then that's also that post-patient is really where that PVC shows up. So by staying pre-patient, we can at least avoid the PVC for now. We also have a partnership with the Vinyl Council through this program in Houston, and they are focused on that PVC collection and making that piece work. So a lot of different pieces that make it a little bit more complex than the lab, but similar plastics that come out of both that are very clean and important to collect.
Thank you. And I think, you touched on this a little bit, but can you talk about the recycling engagement that you have seen whether it's in labs or hospitals, as opposed to, and maybe like how that might look different from other facilities that are not in the medical or laboratory space?
Yeah, I'm still unmuted, so I'll jump in. I'll say from a hospital side, it really depends on caseload and staffing, and then personal passion within the staff. So, for example, the hospital system with Methodist down in Houston, we're really starting with a suburban hospital that's got a little bit more space, and it's got a staff that's incredibly passionate and wants to get this implemented. They also see about 1/3 of the patients that they do at their medical center downtown. And so in the downtown center, where you've got triple the caseload and you've got way less space, then the focus and the time with the staff there is very different than when we're out in the more suburban setting. And so from that hospital side, it really is dependent on personal passion, space, and time. And then I won't speak heavily to the lab side. I'm going to pass that off to James and Sam, but what I've seen from the lab is quite similar to what they've described, where they've got a little bit more time that they can have that purpose to engage in that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to throw in an additional comment there. Scientists are data driven. You've heard me say a number of times in this presentation that sustainability should also be evidence-based. And because of that, I think they are keenly aware of the carbon impact that they're having. And so there's a great willingness to engage in these solutions. There's an earnestness to learn about how they can do more. And they have gotten more bold over the years to ask more of their suppliers. So we're now sitting in this, I would say, era where we start seeing manufacturers talk more and more about sustainability, and it's really the result of scientists asking for these. And we're here ready to support, and we see a number of manufacturers now taking action. So there's certainly an awareness of the problem, an education about the problem, and an identification that, for example, plastic recycling and closed loop supply chains can confer a decarbonization strategy.
And I'll just add to James, and I'm sure James has seen this as well. Many of our incoming inquiries come from scientists, not upper management. And so, like James said, the scientists, they're data driven, but they all have significant compassion for both the health of their future patients and also the health of the climate, because that impacts those very same patients. And just organizationally, when a lab manager sets this up, that lab manager is dedicated to ensure that the plastic is deposited in the right collection boxes and delivered to us in a timely manner. So I don't know anything about the hospital setting, but just learning from Catherine today, it seems like it's a little more slow paced and probably more planned out.
Thank you. That's really, really helpful. Another thing you started to talk about just now was the relative heterogeneity of healthcare and laboratory plastic material streams. And I'm just wondering if you can expand upon that and what the impact on the scalability of recycling programs is relative to that.
Sure, I'd be happy to jump in. We've done extensive work doing waste profiles for these laboratories, looking at both procurement data and disposal data about what can actually be recycled. And what I mentioned before was like the homogeneity of the laboratory waste stream specifically. So in our experience for R&D labs, workflow dependent, it's essentially predominantly plastics 2, 5, and 6. So HDPE, polypropylene, and general purpose polystyrene. If you find a random manufacturing workflow that's really polycarbonate heavy, that can certainly happen. But this is a polyolefin abundant industry and a number 6 plastic abundant industry as well. And you may be asking, like, how is that relevant? That homogeneity and the ability to compatibilize plastics 2 and 5, for example, makes a lot of these solutions not only simple from a processing technology on the back end, but also intelligible from an implementation perspective, creating that diversion strategy, et cetera. The heterogeneity in the healthcare sector, not an expert there. I would defer to Catherine on the extent to which there's heterogeneity. It's just what I saw in my own experience. But the life science sector is distinctly different. The last point I'll make there, within every single laboratory, workflows are modularized, right? Workflows are set up to separate out radioactive work from in vivo work in a vivarium to BSL-2 and below workflows. That creates a very explicit opportunity to identify workflows, work with scientists in each, and has to take advantage of that homogeneous material stream to start recycling. So it's about working with folks to implement these strategies and taking advantage of the polymers that are currently present in the lab.
I'd like to just jump in and have a bit of a conversation with James because we haven't talked about the manufacturers of these pipette tips, and some of them have tried to be more sustainable, and so they put polypropylene on the top and PET on the bottom, the clamshells, and and some of them are have a polypropylene on top and maybe polycarbonate on the bottom, and that causes chaos on the back end. I'd love to hear from James, and I think it's an important topic. That's the origin of the problem. What do we do about that?
It's a great question. It probably dovetails the question about design for sustainability. The fortunate thing is that with those occasional polymer heterogeneity within these products, for example, the polycarbonate base that Sam's referring to is very well abundant in the Eppendorf reusable pipette tip trays. That's, in our experience, a fraction of the material stream. But fortunately, when you're addressing some of those polymer differences on a product by product basis, that's where you can leverage these very well scaled mechanical recycling technologies, near IR separation, color separation, density separation to really, once again, make sure you're creating those homogeneous material streams. So from a design from sustainability perspective, if more folks could take advantage of products that were optimized for recyclability, we'd be even better off as an industry. I would say, though, that, while that is still imperfect, there's still a wonderful opportunity that we have as industry partners to deliver this solution still today.
And Catherine, just in terms of the difference between PET and PETG, there's we do struggle with PETG because it's not the same as PET. Do you have any thoughts on on the PETG side of production. You mentioned PETG. I just wanted to ask, what's behind PETG, and is there a realization that it's, there's a different recycling process in the back end?
Yeah, absolutely. So, California and ASTM have set the definition of PET as 10% or less by weight of comonomer. And so PETGs, when they get a PETG label, that means that they've got more than 10% of that comonomer. And it therefore cannot go through that PET recycle stream. As you noted, it does act as a contaminant. It prevents crystallization, which is an issue when you're trying to recycle PET. The fact that it prevents crystallization is actually part of why it gets used. And in a healthcare setting, its PETG performs very well in sterilization. You don't have loss. You don't see color shift. You don't have loss in performance. And so you're able to have these rigid trays that hold these very expensive devices that can go through that sterilization process without worrying about becoming embrittled, where now if your packaging fails, now this thousands of dollars of device it basically has to go in the trash. And so that is why PETG is used quite a bit in the healthcare setting. There is a lot going on to look at PET and where could PET be used more, and where do we need to be using PETG. And so then on that back end, as you said, so we're a major supplier of PETG. On that back end, we want to make sure that PETG can be recycled. And so that's part of working through the HPRC. We also work with our own customers to help develop that. And that goes back to like the molecular recycling technologies and the capability that opens up versus a mechanical where it needs to be that really pure PET stream.
Yeah, well, let's touch base after so you can help us recycle a PETG.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that was a question Sam had for you, so I'm glad you asked it, Sam. And I think that kind of leads into the next question very well, which is, many of us on this call have heard of molecular recycling, or also called chemical recycling or advanced recycling. Where do you feel that fits into the overall picture of meeting the needs for biomedical and laboratory waste? And I guess just expand upon what you just said.
Yeah, absolutely. So molecular recycling, that's what we call it, because you're literally recycling molecules. So we prefer that terminology versus chemical or advanced, but we're all talking about the same thing when you hear those terms. So it's really a complementary process to mechanical. So where you've got something that can go through a mechanical process, you should put it through that mechanical process. That's going to be your lowest environmental impact recycling. And we want to leverage that as much as we can. But it does require that really pure input stream. And so what James has talked about with polycarbon, what Sam has talked about with Green Labs and what they're able to do with those really homogeneous streams is perfect for that mechanical recycling. When things start to get a little bit more heterogeneous, or you've got some colorant or some additives and things, that's then where molecular recycling comes in and can be quite complementary. And so in that molecular recycling process, we're going back to the building blocks of the polymer. And so that allows us to purify those building blocks, remove additives, remove colorants. We can separate different building blocks. So if there's different monomers in there, they won't become an issue as you're trying to then make new material. And if you've got a straggler material coming through a molecular process that's meant for a polyester and maybe it's an olefin, you can get that out of the system too. So it's not, it doesn't become a contaminant, it doesn't harm the material that you're making on the back end. And so then you've got purified monomers that can then go to make brand new virgin quality, in our case, polyesters. And then those polyesters, we're doing all the work with FDA and TÜV and BSI around medical approvals for these materials. They're exactly the same. We make it on the same equipment. We make it with the same specifications. And so that is where molecular recycling, James has created this wonderful closed loop with a mechanical recycling. Molecular recycling can do the same for this sterile barrier space in medical that doesn't have access to recycled content today.
Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong here, but for anyone who's interested in the crowd, Closed Loop Partners has a very good kind of summary of the landscape of like the technology readiness level of a lot of these recycling, molecular advanced recycling technologies. It's worth a read. As a technology optimist, I hope that advanced and molecular recycling can help us with some of these very difficult to recycle material streams. In the biotech sector, there's constant talk about bioprocessing bags, bioprocessing containers, multi-layer films. I would hope that molecular or advanced recycling can help there. But in terms of immediate action for laboratory material streams that are once again very homogeneous, uh, mechanical recycling, which exists today to produce FDA LNO recycled resins, is 100% scalable, very well characterized in terms of its environmental impact. And so I always kind of caution, specifically in the laboratory space, waiting to take action when there are viable solutions today for some of these very, very readily recyclable material streams, specifically in biotech.
Anything to add, Sam? I think we might have to transition into audience Q&A after this. Nope. All right. Well, thank you so much, all. So I would like to start addressing some of the questions that we have here in the Q&A box. So this question is for Sam. Do you also collect from hospitals, and have you considered separating by color so you can make single color items?
Yeah, so a little background. Our very first customer for this product came from Brigham and Women's Hospital, a lab inside that hospital, and from a personal perspective, I'll share that my wife is a neuropsychiatrist at Brigham, and her research is focused on the impact of plastic in the environment on the brain. So that is a tangent, but I just want to give you some personal perspective of my experience with hospitals. So we collect from labs within hospitals, but not the hospital medical setting. If we can verify that the plastic or the glass is sterilized or autoclaved, we're very open to doing that. And then what was the other question?
Well, I think that was it. Another one was whether you accept pipette tips that have been contaminated by blood or other biological materials, but I think you just answered that.
Right. And I think there was a question about separating by color.
Yes, I apologize. Yes. To
Right.
make single color products.
Yeah. So this product, we don't add any color. So you're going to see black streaks, and every single one that you purchase is a different color. And we do that on purpose because the scientists want to see what the plastic's getting recycled into. So we used to separate before we started manufacturing a product, we used to separate out the clear plastic for the manufacturer to put it the specific colors that they want, but we stopped doing that now that we started this manufacturing process. And so the benchtop that you get, the color will depend on the stream of flakes that go through the injection molding machine, and we're pretty proud of that.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. This one's for Catherine from Robin Nichols. Does Eastman participate in, or is it considered a CHARM, hard to recycle materials recycler?
So I honestly haven't heard that charm name before, so I'm gonna look into that with our team. But I will say that all we recycle are hard to recycle materials. So we don't take anything that is like a PET clear bottle. We want that to go through mechanical recycling. We really emphasize the complementary nature of what we're doing, and so we're focused on things that don't have anywhere else to go, like the waste out of mechanical recycling or textile waste or um, the colored and opaque products that don't have anywhere to go today. So uh, we always describe everything that we're recycling as hard to recycle today. I'm just not familiar with the charm terminology, so I'm going to look into that.
Thank you. We have a good question here for all of you. What percent plastics that can be autoclaved, e.g. PP, are being autoclaved within a medical setting versus falling into a recyclable waste stream? And is there a recyclable and waste stream? And is there opportunity for better solutions at the site of the lab, hospital, et cetera, to reuse plastics, for example?
Yeah, I can hop in there. So, I would say maybe before jumping into what needs to be autoclaved, autoclave is an incredibly energy intensive process. Um, Depending upon how you source your fuel, et cetera, heating water up to create steam is energy intensive. And so that's why at the very beginning, I mentioned that polycarbon focuses first and foremost on reducing unnecessary red bag waste overclassification. A lot of what we've seen for generations in the laboratories is this assumption that if a plastic is used in the lab, it needs to go into a red bag waste stream. There's nuance there. There is the need for determination about what's truly infectious. And so we always advocate for implementing these diversion strategies to minimize the cost of red bag waste and to reduce the carbon impact of treating red bag waste by way of something like an autoclave. I would say that if the material is determined to be infectious, the most traditional route for decontamination, unless you live in a state that allows for medical waste to go direct to an incinerator, is through autoclave. So if the question was specifically what percent of these plastics get autoclaved, it's I imagine 70 to 80% if that material is dictated as being infectious and requiring active decontamination. But important caveat, there certainly are states where someone operates a waste to energy facility and accepts regulated medical waste, and you're bypassing the autoclave in that situation. Not sure if that answered the question, but
Yeah, no, I think that was helpful. Does anyone want to add anything to that?
I'll just say from a hospital setting, there is quite a bit that they are sterilizing on site through autoclave, and those materials, what they are autoclaving, are then typically wrapped in blue wrap material, um, and then that blue wrap becomes waste. So the blue wrap is what's single use in that situation versus the device that they're autoclaving, and the blue wrap is then what's falling into the waste stream. And there are some really great blue wrap recycling programs that exist today. We need more of them. There's a lot of blue wrap out there. And so from what I've seen from the autoclaving side, on site, it's more about the devices versus the plastics themselves. If there's contaminated plastic, it is going through that red bag waste or through their municipal waste, depending on the level of contamination and biohazard. But they're not from like a single-use plastic side, they're not autoclaving on site.
Megan, last week you had a great panel, and one of them was, I think, head of sustainability at Brigham, I think, and she had a lot to say
Beth
about
Israel?
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dana Farber, I think.
No, it was Beth
Maybe.
Israel. Yeah, Beth Israel.
Beth
Yes,
Israel.
yes, that was the hospital. Yeah.
Longwood area. Yeah, and I think there's a lot to do that we can do together. She made a call out, do you know anyone who can take certain materials? If it's not us, we can introduce them to other local options. And but I don't have an answer for the percentages that are autoclaved and actually get recycled. But I thought your panel last week touched on some of those answers.
That's a good point. Yeah, I can probably get some more information from that speaker. Um, so this one's for James. It seems like Envatec is another option along with Sterilis. Are you in conversation with them? Are plastics treated this way still as suitable for circular applications?
Yep, very familiar with the Envatec technology. From what I know about both Sterilis and Envatec, they provide, I would say, different remediation services based off of the customer base that they service, capacity, et cetera. The technology for decontamination for the both of them differ, so that's obviously something to consider. I'm most familiar with the regulatory landscape as it relates to Sterilis Solutions Remediator. So that is a very plug and play opportunity specifically within Massachusetts that allows in the state of Massachusetts that material to be treated on site by way of their remediator, rendered municipal solid waste capable of being recycled. So very excited about that. From the Envatec side, I know that they're very prominent at Northwell, where they currently have an active instrument. I encourage folks to check out these technologies because they're very exciting options that reduce the carbon footprint of the transport of this material stream. But to answer the question, yep, familiar with Envatec, more familiar with Sterilis from a tech specs perspective, and obviously most comfortable in terms of managing the material on the back end from the Sterilis instrument.
Thank you. This is for everyone. So for the panel, what challenges have you encountered with glove recycling in labs and hospitals that handle infectious materials, i.e. BSL-2 labs? Have you found a good solution to entice your clients to move forward with these programs given the sorting challenges?
Yeah, I would be happy to jump in there. We have a nitrile glove recycling solution. To be very explicit, in contrast to PPE, which is many PPEs are derived from polyolefin plastics that are capable of being circularized. Nitrile butadiene rubber is not a plastic that is readily, I would say, deconstructed. Nitrile butadiene rubber is a thermoform that cannot be broken down to its constituent parts by just simply melting it. The material that we collect, the nitrile gloves that we collect, is downcycled. And once again, the definition of downcycling is taking a feedstock or material and turning it into a product that cannot or will not be recycled again. So I wanted to make sure I distinguish that within our solution set there, nitrile gloves cannot be directed into new nitrile gloves, at least today. I hope someone can change that. As it relates to the question to diverting this material, I would say that once again, we see this default assumption within laboratories that if you're using gloves in the laboratory, they are de facto contaminated. That is certainly not the case. And so once again, Polycarbon works hip to hip with EH&S partners, with on-site staff to implement these programs to ensure that the nitrile gloves that we are collecting are not soiled. That is an incredibly important distinction. And when you're looking at nitrile gloves, the entire point of having on nitrile gloves is to prevent contact with your skin. Most assays within the laboratory are done in sterile environments. You're very well aware if your nitrile glove becomes soiled. So once again, common sense solutions focused on working with EH&S and the staff there to minimize any potential opportunity for that material being soiled.
That's great. Thank you. I think one other question here for James. Does Polycarbon own recycling facilities? If so, are they all mechanical recycling? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
So all of the recycling that we do as an organization is mechanical recycling. We do not leverage any chemical or advanced recycling today. Once again, when we sought out to scale this business 4 years ago, leaving medical school, it was done in order to bring the most scalable solution for a closed loop supply chain. There are well-defined technologies in place today that produce FDA LNO circular resins that are mechanical recycling. When you look at the definition of recycling, MRFs are considered recycling facilities. They aggregate materials. Granulators are considered recyclers, right? Because they own a granulator. Color sorters and compounders. So when you're asking about our industry and what is recycling, Polycarbon owns in many of our geographies different steps. Some of our hubs are just aggregation hubs where we're checking material in, we're scanning it, we're evaluating it for nonconformance. In other hubs, we granulate. In other hubs, we're density separating. So it completely depends upon the area that we're in. Other times we work with contractors. So as folks in the plastics industry know, when it comes to producing that circular resin, for example, we work with third parties to produce that specialty compounded material that goes back into the products that we produce.
Thank you. And then this is just a last question to wrap it up. Just making sure there are no other ones that I missed. Um, what factors are involved in the life cycle of your recycling process? So if we look at the big picture, right, we talked about transportation. You just talked about all these other different steps. Um, is there anything you wanna share about that and how that works with respect to all of that data?
At Polycarbon, we always talk about first you want to close the loop and then you want to shrink it opportunistically. We always are trying to create more and more condensed supply chain to minimize the carbon impact of transport. Um, in traditional supply chains, transport is your number one carbon emitter. In a closed loop supply chain, however, our LCAs that we've now done with two separate bodies indicate that the single most important power lever that basically dwarfs the carbon impact of transport is maximizing use cycles of material. If we're having a conversation about decarbonizing this industry, we need to be talking about how do we replace the need for that net new virgin resin time and time again, and that compounds over time. So when we maximize use cycles and we replace the need for that next 12 billion pounds of plastic coming in, that is the number one power lever that our LCA basically indicates as being important for decarbonization. Transport is incredibly important, but I want to make sure I read off one statistic. So within the Northeast, New England, which is, the topic of today, we have a regional supply chain whereby in Hanover, Massachusetts, our team is processing this material, recycling this material. What's super critical to know is that transport, in contrast to fracking and cracking virgin resin out of the ground, is tiny as it relates to the carbon benefit of a closed loop supply chain. So if you look at basically the carbon emissions associated with transporting materials, there's 114 grams of CO2 per kilogram of plastic transported per 1,000 miles. That is 1.6% of the carbon footprint of producing virgin resin plastic. Transport is something we need to focus on. Absolutely. But what drives decarbonization in our industry is continued use cycles. That has a compounding effect. And that's why it's really important to interrogate what are these materials going into? Can they be used again? Can they enter a recycling cycle one time again?
Thanks. Catherine?
Again, from the molecular recycling side, we really were committed as we set our facilities up to having a lower carbon footprint than a virgin fossil process. James has done a great job talking about that virgin fossil process. And so with the molecular recycling for polyesters, we're eliminating 11 steps that are found in the virgin process. And then we do include transport of materials to our facility and any processing steps that go into that to be able to use that in the molecular recycling process. And so we run those LCA calculations with each new feedstock we're assessing. And so the grand majority of the feedstocks that we use today come from east of the Mississippi to keep that transit down. We are building a new plant in Texas, and we're really excited about that plant because it's effectively a greenfield, and that means that we can design to rather than having to kind of work with our existing infrastructure. And with that, we're able to significantly reduce the carbon footprint of a molecularly recycled polyester because we're able to leverage solar energy and thermal batteries, which really heat is the biggest issue in manufacturing plastics. It's not electrical energy. It's how do we heat the process to do what we need to do, and it's a massive carbon sink. And so through using thermal batteries powered by solar energy, we're able to heat the process in a really really low footprint way. So we actually end up with a molecularly recycled material that's got potentially lower, at least parity footprint than a mechanically recycled polyester.
It's very interesting. And Sam, I know you showed us a lot of the data that you collect and just distribute to your customers. So is there anything you want to talk about or add there?
Yeah, so we get our data from plasticrecycling.org, which gives data around, the potential warming of virgin plastic and when manufacturing a product from 100% virgin versus manufacturing a product from 100% recycled plastic. And the transportation is a big part of the CO2 equivalent. And unless you take over all of the market share of Rainin and Eppendorf, it's going to be difficult to argue against how important local is, just from a transportation perspective. So what we do is we really just try to keep it extremely simple. Your plastic gets granulated, and 50 miles from your lab, it gets produced into this lab product that gets sent back to you.
I think it's excellent. Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing, these different successful models of helping to divert plastic waste from these, medical facilities as well as scientific labs. And I really hope that we can, continue to see your businesses expand and see other new ones come up as well to add to the solutions here and fill this gap. So thank
Megan,
you
you did a
again.
great job today. Thank you for convening this.
Thanks, Megan.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you all. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.